Hi everyone. So I do this every September, but I wanted to do a Dark Academia TBR with one recommendation this year. Every year I try to come up with 4 more books to read that fit the Dark Academia aesthetic. I usually recommend a few books that I've read in the previous year that kind of fit the aesthetic as well. So if you're looking for all my recommendations, I have a full playlist, so I will link that in the description. I really like these types of books for this time of year because I think they're very good summer into autumn transitional books because they're not quite autumnal. I think they're that lovely bridge between summer and autumn. Maybe because September is back to school time. I only have one new recommendation this year, and unfortunately it's not much of a recommendation because I didn't rate it very high. But it's An Education in Malice by S.D. Gibson. But it definitely fits the aesthetic, and I think certain people would like this book even though I didn't love it that much. So this is the same author who did A Diary of Blood, which is a Dracula retelling from the perspective of one of his wives. This is set in the same universe, however you don't need to read Diary of Blood in order to read this though, just set in a vampiric world. This is a Carmilla retelling, so I'm actually unaware of the Carmilla story. I believe that's the first vampire story ever. I actually think that came before Dracula. This is in first person narrative, which makes it different to Diary of Blood, which was second person. A Diary of Blood was written as letters to Dracula, where this is just kind of a standard first person book with dual POV. So you have Laura and Carmilla. Laura is like this new student in this New England university. She has this talent for poetry. She gets invited into this poetry seminar, which first years usually don't get into, but is it De La Fontaine, I think, is the professor, really likes her work, so she invited her in early. There's another student there, Carmilla, who's a little bit older. She kind of instantly doesn't like Laura because of the kind of special privilege she got. Carmilla kind of has this dysfunctional relationship with the professor, so they kind of start off being academic rivals. I did really like Laura and Carmilla's kind of banter throughout the book. I liked their rivals to then kind of teaming up. I think some of this book was just a little bit too on the nose for me. Like, I felt S.D. Gibson was like, okay, I want all those Dark Academia tropes, I want the secret history but make it vampires. Like, I felt like the author told you rather than showed you. There's an example in this book where Laura has always wanted to be a priest. She says she's very pious and religious, but it's not really shown anywhere. You're just kind of told randomly, kind of expected to believe it, and there's a lot of examples of that in this book. I think the author would have done better having a longer, more detailed book, maybe dove deep more into those themes if she wanted to, and I think it maybe would have been executed a bit better. But this is a very quick, fast-paced book. For me too, I didn't love the redemption arc of the villain at the end, so I felt like this was a good idea but not executed the best. I just wish the author wrote a long book. Same with the poetry too. It doesn't really delve too much into the poetry that much. It's just a lot of telling, not showing, which is unfortunate. The vampire elements of this is quite good, but yeah, if you're looking for that, like a darker kind of maybe unhealthy relationships, kind of dysfunctional relationships, nearly gothic academia, New England setting, you probably will like this. This is more of a love story than anything though, just not my favorite in terms of storytelling maybe. And some of the themes I didn't really care for either. Very graphic in places, like in terms of sexual content and violence, so just bear that in mind as well. Yeah, not a light easy read, but Dark Academia usually isn't, so this is my only recommendation I have this year. So I'm going to move on to my TBR. So usually with my TBR videos, I actually over the summer been doing the TBR jar, so picking out prompts. However, for this, I just researched some of the books I have and I picked out what I think might be Dark Academia books, and I will just see. Some of these I was quite shocked. I actually just looked up some of the books I own and seen if they were Dark Academia. A lot of these came up on a lot of reading lists for the aesthetic, so I picked these 4 and I'm actually really excited for these 4. So the first book I have is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I know nothing about this book. I think this is slightly magical realism. I think it's kind of fantastical in a way. I think the character is in this place, and I think they slowly, as they discover the place, I think they slowly discover who they are and what the place is. And I've heard that the less you know about this book going in, the better. So I know nothing about this, but I've just heard rave, like absolute rave reviews. Like this is so many people's 5-star book. It's a lot of people's favorite book. I love a book where you have to figure out what's going on yourself. I really, really love that. I think in this, the house is nearly personified that he's in, and these like words start showing up on his walls and stuff, and I think they ask him to do stuff, and I think slowly things click for him. I think it's only over 200 pages, so I think it would be a quick read. But apparently this is dark academia. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I am very, very excited to read this book. Just heard so many good things about it. The next one I have, again, I'm so excited to get to this one as well, is All's Well by Mona Awad. She's the author of Bunny, which is quite popular, also Rouge. But this is a Shakespearean book, which I love. So I think if this chronically ill teacher, I think she's had a lot of things going wrong in her life. Like I think her marriage fails. I think her job is on the line. She's this theatre director in this university. I think she's determined to put on All's Well That Ends Well, but the students really want to put on Macbeth. But I love kind of stories about women at their breaking point. I think that does sound just really, really interesting, and the fact that her students are really not cooperating with her. It reminds me a little bit of If We Were Villains by Emil Rio by reading the back of this, and that was my favourite book of 2022. I loved that book. The fact that it's reminding me of this just by reading the blurb, I'm very excited for it. So I think this is like a revenge story as well. I think she gets revenge on the students. So it just sounds really dark and twisted. It just sounds really interesting. I love dark academia books that are actually based on Shakespeare rather than maybe Latin and Greek like it always is. So yeah, just the fact that it kind of reminds me of If We Were Villains, I think I'm going to really, really love this. I'm very excited. I've never actually read Bunny either. I put it on a TBR, but I never read it. So yeah, I think if I like her writing, I think I might pick up Bunny soon as well. So I've two more. They're more in the thriller category actually. They've shown up in some dark academia lists as well, so I'll see. But I've got A Portrait of a Thief, and this is by Grace D. Lee. And I think I got this, yes, it was a Luma crate, so it's got this like bright yellow sprayed edge. It's got this really pretty design, and then I think these are all the characters as well, so it's a very pretty book. I absolutely adore the sound of this. I think it just sounds really, really good. So this is a heist book, and you have Will Chen. He's the main character. He's this senior in Harvard University from a Chinese immigrant family. He's a perfect student. He has an art major. He's an artist himself, does really well, really respectful to his parents, basically the perfect student. But I think he gets angry by the Chinese artifacts being displayed in museums, and I think he goes into like a lot of history of colonialism. He gets this offer to steal these artifacts back, and I think it's something like 50 million is the prize, and he ropes in this troupe of other Chinese American students to help him. So I think there's going to be a lot of talks of maybe like Babel or Babel by R.F. Kuang. It talks about the complications of being from one country and living in another, benefiting from colonialism. So I would say fans of Babel would like this. I think all 6 of them have like complicated relationships with their Chinese American identities. So it just sounds excellent. It just sounds like you're going to learn a lot about culture, multinationalism, art and museums, art history. The fact that it's an exciting thriller heist situation as well makes it sound just really, really, really good. I'm really excited to read this. I know Netflix are going to adapt this into a show, I think, or a movie. Not quite sure, but Netflix are going to do something with it. It'd be fun to read it before it comes out. Yeah, and I gave Babel 5 stars, so I really, really did love that book. The fact that it sounds like it is really cool, like a more modern telling of it. The fact that it's a heist, I love a heist. Six of Crows is my favourite book ever. Very, very excited to read this. Right, this one I'm not as sure about. This is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, and she wrote In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and I think that book did really, really well. Definitely fits the dark academia aesthetic. I think this one does slightly as well. This is about Shay and a group of her friends in college kind of meet this captivating man. He tells them how the world actually really works, feeds them all these lies. I think it's a cult. And then I think Shay and one of her friends are the only ones who escape it. And I think it's years later and she gets her revenge. She's obsessed with true crime podcasts. And I think through a podcast she hears of her friend's death. and I think she realizes that what happened to her in university isn't dead and buried, it's actually still ongoing. I think she recruits the help of the podcast host, tries to uncover what happens, I think goes back to the university to try to see what happened. Definitely sounds more like a thriller book. I think the academic setting is only a small part of this book, but it's kind of the setup for everything else. So it sounds interesting, and I think a thriller going into autumn, a thriller is a really good book to read. So if I like this, I'll probably pick up In My Dreams a Holding Knife. Yeah, I think if I'm in a thriller mood, I'll definitely pick this one up. So yeah, I am very, very excited for all 4 of these. I really like that they're all very different. I like that this is like Shakespeare, more magical realism, this is like a heist, and then this is like a murder thriller book. So they're all very, very different. So I think they'll fit any kind of reading mood I have this month. So yeah, I'll let you know how these books go, either in a wrap up or reading vlogs. I'll let you know what I think about them. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you like to subscribe, I do everything book related on this channel. So TBR videos like this one, reading vlogs and wrap ups and book shopping videos, all that jazz. I'll leave these books and my socials all in the description. I'll also leave my Dark Academia playlist because I have definitely way more recommendations than An Education in Malice. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.